Let's turn now to Dr. Scott Gottlieb, the former FDA Commissioner and a CNBC contributor. Dr. Gottlieb, it's good to see you tonight.
Thanks.
We are at the end, or coming to the end of yet another week, and we seem to be ending on a bit of a good note, more good numbers coming out of New York. What does it tell us about where we are in this crisis?
Well, look, that's true. The models are improving. The steps that we've taken to try to reduce the spread of the virus are having its intended effect. As brutal as those measures were in terms of confining people to their homes and closing businesses, it is slowing the spread of the virus. We still have a long way to go. This month is still going to be a rough month. We're going to be going through the epidemic this month and starting to come down. And then in May, we have hard decisions to make about how we try to transition back to work slowly through May and into June. And slowly enough that we don't get a resurgence in the virus. That's going to be very precarious because we're not going to have in place what we really want to have while we're doing that. I don't think we're going to be anywhere near the testing capacity that we want to have as we're coming through this epidemic and want to start testing people at a much more widespread basis. And so we're going to be doing it a little bit blind. We're going to be doing it without the capacity to really be able to detect new spread in the community at the level that we're going to want to. Hopefully we have that for the fall. We have that testing capacity in place for the fall. But probably what we need is the capacity to test several million and maybe more people a week, at least 3 or 4 million people a week. You want to have very broad testing capacity and very liberal use of those tests. And I think businesses also want to think about how they can deploy tests at the place of work, maybe with shared services that businesses adopt to be able to test people when they come back to work and also while they're at work if they have signs and symptoms of coronavirus to make it easy for people to get access to that kind of care.
Dr. Gottlieb, the refrain of we don't have enough testing, we're not going to have enough testing, why is it taking so long for us to ramp up on the testing aspect?
Well, what we've done up to date in terms of getting more testing into the market is we've got players into the market who weren't in the game. So we got the clinical labs in like LabCorp and Quest. We got the academic labs into the game. And so we've got all those people now ramping up their testing. But now they're going to be maxed out pretty soon. And so trying to get higher levels of testing from where we are don't just require us to get new people into the market, but get more systems into the market. And that's going to be a harder slog. We actually have to expand the capacity, expand the platforms that are in the marketplace, and try to bring new players into the market that traditionally haven't been in this market. So it was easier to go from 100,000 tests a week to 1 million tests a week than it's going to be to go from 1 million tests a week to 2 million tests a week or 3 million tests a week, because now we have to do harder work of getting new entrants into the market and expanding platforms, basically building new machines. And that's a slower ramp.
Is this where we would see the delay in the acceptance and the preparedness for the virus show up more acutely in the lack of testing that we have at the current time, and also the length of time it is still taking some to get their results back?
Yeah, and that's a product of the fact that the platforms are overwhelmed and we don't have high throughput platforms in some cases, and we don't have the kind of platforms that give a rapid result at the point of care. Those are coming onto the market. The Abbott system, Cepheid's Gene Expert, Becton Dickinson has a system that I'm sure they're trying to bring to the market as well that's deployed in a lot of doctors' offices. Those are rapid tests that can be deployed at the point of care. Look, we've come a long way in the last month in terms of testing capacity. The argument is that we should have been doing this back in January and February, and then we'd be in a different place right now. We would have had broader testing capacity in early March, and we would be building from there. So we're building from where we probably should have been. So we're a month behind, maybe more. We'll get there, I think. But I'm still concerned about what we're going to have in May and June, and I'm frankly still concerned about what we're going to have in September. Because remember, we're going to come back, hopefully. The summer is a backstop. We start to lift these restrictions in May into June. We get back to some semblance of normal life in July and August. And then we come back in September. Schools are back. Residential campuses are back. People are back in the workplace more. And that's going to be a real risky time of the year for us, that we could face the risk of outbreaks again. And we absolutely need the testing capacity in place by that time, or then we're going to probably be in much greater risk.
If the president asked you tonight, Dr. Gottlieb, when is it realistic to reopen the economy, what would you tell him?
Well, look, we put out a metric where we said in the report that we put out on reopening the economy that you want to see sustained reductions in new cases for at least 2 weeks before you contemplate reopening the economy. Now, the question is, what is sustained reduction in new cases? It's probably a week or more of continued declines in new cases. And you wait another full 2 weeks, because that's the length of time of one replication cycle. It's the incubation period, if you will. So that puts you some point in May. I think in May we're going to start to contemplate, do we lift the stay-at-home orders? Do we allow businesses to go back to work, certain businesses, but leave in place certain restrictions like you can't have gatherings more than 10 or 50 people. Certain businesses need to remain closed longer, things that are purely entertainment that congregate people inside in large groups. So you're going to have a slow reintroduction. So I think in May and June we're coming through this. In June we start to look more opened up. And then in July and August, hopefully transmission breaks off with the summer. We hope there's a seasonal component here. And, we're getting back to a semblance of normal activity in the depth of the summer here in the United States. But then we'll have to see if it becomes epidemic in the southern hemisphere and how seasonal this virus is. And if it does, then there's going to be a real risk that it gets reintroduced here in the fall or wants to come back.
Here we are talking about testing, getting back to work. I'm curious as to how worried you are about possible reinfections from people who are cured. I bring that up because there's an article today in Fortune magazine talking about patients in South Korea who are being reinfected. Is it possible to have a reactivated virus?
Well, I don't know if they're getting reactivated insofar as they never cleared the virus and it's now sort of resurging in their bodies. I think that it is possible to get reinfected. This is not like measles or chickenpox where you get it once and you develop a lifelong immunity. Coronaviruses, and there's 7 that circulated prior to this, cause the common cold, and we get reinfected with those coronaviruses all the time. So it's likely the case that the immunity here isn't enduring. It might last 6 months, maybe up to a year, and then you can get reinfected. Now the question is, do you have some cell immunity that makes it so that when you get reinfected that second time, you don't have a severe course? And that's probably the case, but we don't know. That's just speculation. But it's likely a case that you're going to be able to get reinfected with this. And that's why the whole concept of herd immunity, letting this just infect the young people who seem to do better with this virus, and they'll all become immune, and then it's harder for this to spread through the population. And that's what Sweden is postulating. That's why that theory I don't think is going to hold, because a very small percentage of the population is actually going to have been infected with this, and they're not going to have lifelong immunity. They're going to be able to get reinfected.
Good to know. Doctor, we appreciate the time as always. We'll see you soon. That's Dr. Scott Gottlieb joining us once again this evening.